The EPCHS, heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at the EPCHS.com.
It's Football Friday on the EP Podcast. The regular 30 Minutes of Good is available still on demand if you missed it earlier this week, anywhere podcasts can be found, and always at the EPPodcast.com. During the high school football season, though, we check in each and every week on the Evergreen Park Mustangs. And sitting down here at the 9-foot homemade oak bar, Coach Jim Ramazinski. Coach Ram, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Normally, it's fun to just talk about a win, but you took a loss. And when we have the first win of your head coaching career at Evergreen Park, we knew eventually, the odds were there was going to be a first loss. And this one here, you kind of had to play a little bit behind the eight ball because you had the backup quarterback going, right?
Yeah, we had to come up with a different game plan. Our starting quarterback, Dejan Feliciano, was not available last week. So we had a good week of practice. We came up with some alternative plans, and we played a tough game. Just came up short in the end.
It's interesting. I looked at the box score. It looks like it's back and forth, basically. 7 points here, tied up. 7 points here, tied up. And then in the fourth quarter, kind of explain to me what happens there.
We were winning 14-13 with, maybe about, I don't know it exactly, maybe about 6 minutes left in the game.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we had a bad snap near our end zone. We took a safety. So we're losing now 15-14. And then we kicked the ball off, got a stop on defense. Had some different guys out there working, and we threw an interception. They were able to score off the interception. We had a chance at the end. We had Aiden Bench in there at the end, throwing the ball. He threw some nice balls. We just came up a little short.
Whenever you hear you got the other guy going, I always think of that. One of my favorite television shows ever was Friday Night Lights. Mm-hmm. Like you got Coach Taylor. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. I think I got that right. I might be wrong.
You got it.
Yeah. And that whole series is basically like first the guy who is the quarterback is there, and then like the backup quarterback gets his opportunity. And it's kind of interesting that, you had a game now this week where the backup quarterback had to come in. And he gets, it's probably like, okay, this kid, let's see if he knows the playbook. Let's see if he's able to do it, because generally he probably doesn't see the field.
No, and we put two guys out there on Friday night, Jedidiah and Aiden Bench. And, to their credit, they worked hard. They were making plays. They were focused. It's tough when you come in and you just haven't gotten as many reps as the number one. And, I'm looking forward to this week as an opportunity to kind of get our team back on track. We played hard. We came up short. I told the boys, you got 24 hours to think about a loss, and then it's time to move forward. And that's been our mindset since Saturday morning and, all week at practice so far. So I'm happy to see that they're ready to go again.
Coach Ram, this episode and every episode of the EP Podcast brought to you proudly by the First National Bank of Evergreen Park, a local community bank that has all kinds of ways to keep your money in your pocket. No overdraft charges. Every ATM is free. It doesn't matter what the charge is, they're going to put the money back in. If you're a small business owner, they now have a business savings special. Open up a new business savings account, get 4% annual percentage yield for the first 12 months with qualifying activities. Stop in and see them today in that iconic building at 95th and Pulaski, the First National Bank of Evergreen Park, member FDIC. Let's take a look at this week's opponent now. So you got Richards now.
Yep.
And Richards is a big one. Every year, that's a big one. That's one of the tougher contests, if I remember right, each and every year for Evergreen Park. So how are you preparing for this game?
Well, we know we got to play fast. We know we got to play physical. We know we have to be really tight on both sides of the ball. Not a lot of mental mistakes. So we've just been trying to stress that at practice, and honestly, just getting our guys out there running at full speed, understanding, hey, you got another game Friday night, and those guys are going to be flying around. You got to be flying around at practice. And, our boys are ready. They're stepping up, doing a good job.
So I always got warned every year when I was doing this. I would just look at records, and I would sit there and say, oh, well, Richardson's 2-2, so they're completely beatable. And then I would get told, well, you don't know everything about the game. So when you size up your opponent this year, how strong is this Richards team in your opinion?
Richards is kind of I would say the most consistent team in the SSC Red. They've been doing it for a long time. They typically are at the top of the conference, if not the conference winner. And they played a couple tough non-conference games, weeks 1 and 2, against quality opponents. So I wouldn't get too fooled by the 2-2 record. They're a very good team. They're well coached. They got some athletes, and they've historically been a good program. So it'll be a good battle on Friday night.
How do they match up? Something makes me think that they're a team that normally is just a little bit bigger and really fast. At least that seems to be their history. So how do they match up with you? Because you've got a lot of two-way players that can get gassed late in the game from playing the whole 60 minutes.
You're pretty spot on your description. They got some athletes who can really move with the ball. They can get it open in space. Their line is probably not as historically big as it's been, but they're tough. They work hard. They fire off the ball pretty hard, and they're hungry just like our boys are. So it'll be a good matchup on Friday night.
So you are 3-1. Even after the loss, you got a winning record right now. Even in a loss, I'm sure you have guys that you are happy with their performance, guys you want to feature here on the program.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said before, Jed Ajayi coming out there, playing multiple positions, 163 yards on the ground. Antonio Clay Jones, another good game with a touchdown for us. Again, on defense, Eduardo Antunes has been a beast all year at the D-line. Gerald O'Hare, beast all year, D-line. And David Johnson, Jaden Pittman, been coming up big at linebacker. So we had defensively we played well. There's definitely room for improvement. But like I said, hey, new week, we're ready to roll.
To go back to the idea that you had two guys that were playing QB, is it because they have different skill sets? Was it something where you were like, hey, this guy may be more of a traditional passer, this guy can run, depending on the situation, you were kind of mixing it up? I'm just curious, like two different guys, and I've heard Jed Ajayi mentioned several times, the guy who's running out there and catching passes and running all over the place, and so in my mind, as just somebody who's a casual fan listening to you talk, I think to myself, well, he was doing a lot of running, there maybe was some option, does it kind of change what you were doing there?
Yeah, we just we put out what we thought gave us the best shot to win the game, and our guys stepped up. We had some unfortunate plays that kind of bit us, and we just came up short. Had we perhaps toned down some of those errors, that game could have went the other way. But hats off to Bremen; they were well coached, they played well, their boys played hard, they got the win. That's life, and we're thinking about Richards now.
When you look at week 1 up until now, because I remember the first time we talked, you're like, we got to clean some stuff up. And you kept saying it. We got to clean some stuff up. How do you feel your team has progressed since week 1 through the first 4 weeks?
I think our guys are understanding what their specific role is in the grand scheme of things, which is good. And effort's been there, which is always good because, sometimes I've been on teams. Most teams have been pretty good, but sometimes you got to do some extra motivation. These guys want to win. The coaches want to win. The school is there to support us, and we're just excited to get back out there on Friday night. We've cleaned some things up, and you know what? Like we talked about, there's going to be ups and downs to every season. It's how you respond to those ups and those downs which dictates how your season's going to progress. And I think our boys are ready to step up to the plate.
Let's talk a little bit about the fans. You had 4 home games here, just in a row. You've got a 5th one now. What has it been like playing in front of the home crowd? What is your impression now, 4 games in, with the Evergreen Park Mustang fan base? How do you feel about them right now?
I think it's great. I mean, the environment there on Friday night is very exciting. The student section gets it going. We have a lot of support. Our band is great. Our dance team.
You have a really good band.
Yeah.
I know that.
Our POMs, our cheerleaders. it's a great event and it's done well. Our athletic director, Jim Solden, does a good job getting everything set up. And we are, we're fortunate that we have such a beautiful campus with a great fan base that is supportive. And, my family's at every game. For me personally, that's a lot of fun just to see them there. And, I enjoy walking off the field, more so after a win than a loss, but I enjoy walking off the field knowing that this is the community that I live in and that our Friday nights are a lot of fun at Evergreen Park High School.
Are you getting recognized more now as the season's going on? Like, I know you're always wearing all the garb because I always see you after you're done with the practice. But I mean, I always just picture you got the ball coach. He's the guy coaching the local high school team. At some point, people are going to just start recognizing and be like, hey, coach, what's going on?
Yeah.
Maybe chew your ear off a little bit. Be like, you know what you need to be doing more? You need to be doing more passing. You need to start going back to the old, running up the middle in a cloud of dust. Like, do you get advice? Do you get people that corner you?
Well, I'll tell you this, even before I was a head coach, you always get advice. So, you know what, everybody's been very supportive. And I mean, on occasion, people say, hey, coach, how are you? And, like I said, it's a great community and I'm happy to kind of be a part of it and, have those fans and those community members support us.
I had an opportunity this week. I was hanging out with my brother-in-law. He's in a darts league and he's from Beverly. And so we had all these guys that were hanging around that were from like St. Barnabas and Christ the King, and they combined their football teams. Mm-hmm. And they were like, oh, where are you from? I'm like, Evergreen. And they're like, oh, where's your kid go to school? I'm like, oh, over at Redeemer. And right away they were like, whew, that is a program over there, right? And you have that, and you have the Stallions over here as well. You got a lot of young kids that like are playing football. And this is, these guys were from a neighborhood over, think of it. Like, they're over in Beverly. They're a little, they're close enough. We intermingle with them. But when I said Evergreen, these guys who are really into football were like right away with just the amount of kids here that are playing ball. Have you gotten a chance to kind of like take a look at that at all or even kind of understand how much is going on at the level below you? Because at some point, you hope that some of those kids come walk in the doors at your place, right?
Well, at this point in the season, I've been to pretty much every youth game that you can imagine. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, this is so you're preparing for the team, but then the youth games happen and coach has to get out there. Are you scouting or just making yourself known and talking about the team? Like, what are you doing at that point?
Well, we're just trying to support our local teams, the Stallions, the Most Holy Redeemer Raiders, and we're just trying to show our support for our local football teams. It's exciting to see so many young players playing the sport. And, it tells me that the future is bright for Evergreen Park football.
When you look at those kids, because my kid didn't play football. He was a hockey player, right? My daughter, played in the band and she'd be on the sidelines at times. So I went and saw a couple of games, at the grammar school level. I would always sit there and say, okay, well, that kid's just good because he grew quicker than everybody else, right? Like you'd see some kid out there that was a monster in like the 7th and 8th grade. And I'm like, well, he had his growth spurt early. That's probably why he's dominating. Like, are you able to kind of look at those kids even at that level and be able to tell who's going to be potentially a good high school player? Or are you just kind of sitting there taking in the game, supporting the school, talking about your school, and that gets decided later on when they're freshmen, sophomores, whatever?
Well, I think the big thing with young football players is the willingness to be aggressive, because it is an aggressive game, offensively, defensively. So if you see somebody, a young kid who's out there who is not afraid, that's a big.
That's a kid. That's a kid. You're like, I want that kid.
That's a big thing to me, because the reality is, some guys don't get it until later, and some kids don't get it ever. I mean, it's part of, this is it's a full-on collision sport that, you have to be willing to kind of put your body out there to play the game. So when I see a young player who gets after it as far as physicality, to me, that tells me that's a big point to me that, hey, that kid's probably going to be a good player if he continues on this track.
There'll be some physicality going on Friday night, 7 p.m. start, another home game for the Evergreen Park Mustangs. Then they got to figure out how to get on a bus after 5 weeks in a row at home, and hopefully they get on that bus 4-1 with a big win over Richards. We're pulling for you. Another conference game here, and then you got a bunch of road games and your one homecoming game. So I know you want to get this one, Coach. But good luck to you.
Yeah, thank you.
And hopefully we get a victory here for the Mustangs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for your time.
It's the EP Podcast. All things Evergreen Park. It's the EP Podcast. Evergreen Park.